What if Qatar, one of the richest Gulf states, quietly joins hands with Iran, Israel's biggest regional rival, for a secret alliance? Imagine hidden deals, military coordination, and diplomatic moves shaping a war that could change the Middle East forever. Today, we dive into how this secret alliance could unfold. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Conflicti. Today's video is one of the most intense scenarios we've ever covered: Qatar's possible secret alliance with Iran against Israel. Now, on the surface, Qatar presents itself as a modern, independent Gulf state with close ties to the US and strong diplomatic clout. But behind the curtain, whispers suggest that Qatar could one day align itself with Tehran. Why? Because both nations share overlapping interests: opposition to Israel's dominance, concerns over Western influence, and a desire to reshape Middle Eastern power structures. Israel, meanwhile, continues to solidify its relations with Gulf states like the UAE and Bahrain under the Abraham Accords. This makes Qatar stand out, as it often charts a unique path, balancing between Washington, Tehran, and even militant groups like Hamas. For Israel, this uncertainty is dangerous. For Qatar and Iran, it could be an opportunity. In today's deep dive, we'll break this down into 10 key phases, from secret diplomacy to military cooperation to possible open conflict. Buckle up, because this story is not only about geopolitics, it's about the very future of the Middle East. To understand Qatar's potential alliance with Iran, we must first look at Qatar's unique geopolitical position. Despite being a tiny state, it's enormously wealthy thanks to natural gas, specifically the North Field, the largest gas reserve in the world. Here's the twist: that same gas field extends into Iran's territory, where it's called the South Pars Field. This shared resource is already a foundation for cooperation. Economically, Qatar has every reason to maintain friendly ties with Tehran, because energy partnerships and coordination over production levels impact both their economies. Now, when Israel grows closer to Arab states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain, Qatar feels isolated. Doha wants to maintain independence, and one way to do that is by leaning toward Iran, Israel's primary enemy. This isn't just about economics, though. Qatar has hosted Hamas leaders in Doha, provided aid to Gaza, and often positioned itself as a supporter of Palestinian causes. These positions directly clash with Israel's agenda. So if Israel continues to expand its regional influence, Qatar may decide that the only way to counterbalance is by deepening ties with Iran. This would not just be an energy partnership, it could become a strategic alliance. But how could such an alliance remain secret? That's where diplomacy and back-channel communication come in. Both Qatar and Iran are masters at quiet negotiation. Qatar has hosted multiple international dialogues, from Taliban peace talks to prisoner exchanges, showing its ability to play both sides without revealing everything. If Qatar were to secretly align with Iran, it might begin with intelligence sharing. Qatar's powerful media platform, Al Jazeera, could also play a subtle role in shaping public perception, promoting narratives that weaken Israel's position globally while elevating the Palestinian struggle. Meanwhile, Iran, already under heavy sanctions, would benefit from Qatar's financial networks and access to Western markets. Money could move quietly, funding proxy groups in Gaza or Lebanon. Israel might notice shifts, but without clear proof, it couldn't directly accuse Qatar. This covert stage would be about preparation, building trust between Doha and Tehran, testing how far they can go without raising alarms, and setting up the foundation for something bigger. To the outside world, Qatar would still appear neutral, balancing ties with the US and Gulf neighbors. But behind closed doors, the secret alliance could already be taking shape, waiting for the right spark to ignite. That spark could come from Gaza. Qatar has long been one of the biggest financial supporters of Palestinians, sending billions in aid for reconstruction, salaries, and fuel. While Israel has tolerated this to avoid humanitarian and collapse in Gaza, it also suspects that some funds end up with Hamas military wing. Iran, of course, is Hamas' long-time backer, providing weapons, training, and funds. Now imagine if Qatar and Iran begin to coordinate their support. Iran supplies the rockets and know-how, while Qatar ensures that money and legitimacy flow smoothly into Gaza. This combined effort would dramatically strengthen Hamas. From Israel's perspective, this is an existential threat. A Gaza that is well-funded, well-armed, and politically protected becomes much harder to control. And once Hamas grows stronger, Hezbollah in Lebanon could also be emboldened, seeing Qatar's indirect blessing through Iran. At this point, Israel would realize that the battle is not just with Tehran, but with Doha too. Yet, Qatar's Western connections make it hard for Israel to confront them openly. This shadow war, fought through Gaza, Lebanon, and propaganda battles, would mark the alliance's first visible impact, and the rest of the region would start paying close attention. Next comes the military dimension. Qatar may not have the manpower of Iran, but it has something just as valuable: money and technology. With its enormous wealth, Qatar could quietly invest in Iran's weapons programs, drone technology, and cyber warfare units. Iran already leads the region in drone warfare, supplying them to Russia and its proxies. If Qatari funding helps expand this program, Israel faces a nightmare scenario: waves of Iranian drones financed by Qatari wealth targeting Israeli bases and cities. In return, Iran could offer Qatar protection. Though Doha hosts the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, it has no guarantee of American loyalty if regional tensions explode. Iran could quietly promise Qatar that in case of war, its missiles and militias would defend Doha against hostile neighbors. This stage of the alliance transforms it from a diplomatic game into a real military pact. Israel, watching closely, would recognize that the lines are being drawn. The tiny but ultra-rich Emirate of Qatar, paired with the vast and battle-hardened power of Iran, could create a hybrid threat Israel has never faced before. Financial muscle and military reach working in perfect coordination. Once the military cooperation becomes undeniable, regional dynamics would start to shift rapidly. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain, already aligned with Israel under the Abraham Accords, would panic. For them, Qatar siding openly with Iran is a betrayal. They might cut ties, isolate Doha further, or even pressure the U.S. to intervene. But here's the twist. Qatar thrives under pressure. Remember the Gulf blockade of 2017. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, and Bahrain all tried to isolate Qatar for supporting Islamists and working too closely with Iran. What happened? Qatar survived. Thanks to Turkey and, yes, Iran. That experience proved to Doha that it doesn't need Gulf unity to survive. This time, however, the stakes would be higher. A Qatar-Iran alliance would split the Arab world down the middle, some countries backing Israel and the West, others leaning toward a resistance axis with Tehran. Turkey might quietly support Qatar, while Iraq and Syria align with Iran. Suddenly, the Middle East becomes a chessboard with Qatar as a surprise kingmaker. For Israel, this means more enemies, more uncertainty, and a growing sense that its dominance is slipping away. The quiet storm would now feel like an approaching hurricane. But how would Israel respond? Israel's strategy has always been preemptive strike before threats grow too large. Faced with a Qatar-Iran alliance, Israel might launch covert operations, sabotaging Iranian facilities, intercepting Qatari money transfers, or even carrying out cyber attacks on Doha's financial institutions. Israel's Mossad is one of the most effective intelligence agencies in the world. It could target Qatari diplomats, expose secret meetings, or leak information that forces Doha into the spotlight. If successful, this could embarrass Qatar and limit its ability to maneuver. However, an exposed Qatar might double down, openly siding with Iran instead of keeping things hidden. This could trigger a chain reaction, regional militaries mobilizing, proxy groups launching attacks, and the U.S. struggling to control its Gulf allies. For Israel, the nightmare scenario is a two-front or even three-front conflict: Gaza flaring, Hezbollah launching missiles from Lebanon, and Iranian-backed militias stirring trouble in Iraq and Syria, all while Qatar's wealth ensures endless funding. This is the point where a secret alliance turns into a regional crisis that no one can ignore anymore. The shadow games would end, and the countdown to confrontation would begin. At this stage, the global powers would get involved. The United States, deeply tied to both Qatar and Israel, would face a dilemma. Qatar hosts the Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American presence in the region. Would Washington risk losing that strategic asset by siding too openly with Israel against Doha? Meanwhile, Russia and China would see opportunity. Both powers have been strengthening ties with Iran, and they'd gladly welcome Qatar into that camp. A Iran-China partnership could reshape global energy flows, with natural gas redirected toward Asia and away from Europe. For Europe, this would be devastating. Qatar is one of its top LNG suppliers, especially after the Ukraine war cut off Russian gas. If Doha starts leaning toward Tehran and Beijing, Europe loses a critical lifeline. In short, a Qatar-Iran alliance wouldn't just shake the Middle East. It would send shockwaves through the global energy and security system. Suddenly, this isn't just Israel's problem. It's Washington's, it's Europe's, it's the world's. And that global involvement would make the conflict even harder to contain. What started as quiet diplomacy in Doha could now be spiraling into a full-blown geopolitical earthquake. As the crisis escalates, propaganda and psychological warfare would play a central role. Qatar's Al Jazeera could frame Israel as the aggressor, amplifying Palestinian suffering and painting Doha as the defender of justice. Iran's vast propaganda machine would echo these narratives, pushing them across the Arab world. On the other side, Israel and its allies would highlight Qatar's duplicity, showing how Doha plays both friend and foe to the West. They would push stories of Qatari money fueling terrorism, pressuring the U.S. to rethink its base in Doha. Social media would explode with misinformation, fake news, and carefully planted narratives. The war would already be raging in the digital space before a single missile is launched. And make no mistake, this information war matters. If enough of the global public believes that Israel is the villain and Iran are defenders, Western governments will face domestic pressure to stay out. That gives the alliance room to maneuver. At this stage, the battlefield isn't just Gaza or Lebanon, it's global opinion, and whoever controls the narrative controls the pace of escalation. The Middle East would not only be burning in reality, but also in the minds of millions worldwide. Finally, we reach the tipping point. If Qatar and Iran fully commit, Israel could face an unprecedented multi-front war. Gaza launches rockets, Hezbollah strikes from the north, militias stir in Iraq and Syria, and Iranian drones swarm from afar, all backed by Qatari money. Israel's Iron Dome and military might would be stretched thin. The Abraham Accord states might offer some help, but their populations may resist being dragged into open war. The U.S. would be torn between protecting Israel and maintaining its Qatari base. Russia and China would exploit the chaos. At this stage, the Middle East would be on the edge of a regional war, potentially World War III if great powers collide. For Qatar, the gamble is enormous. It could emerge as the unexpected leader of an anti-Israel coalition or face devastating retaliation that threatens its survival. For Iran, it's a chance to finally corner Israel. And for Israel, it's a fight for existence. This is how a secret alliance, born in whispers and shadows, could unfold into the most dangerous crisis of our time. The question is not whether it's possible, but whether the world is ready if it happens. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Conflict Eye, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our deep dive analyses into the world's most critical conflicts. And tell us in the comments, do you think Qatar would ever risk everything by siding with Iran against Israel?